The night everything shifted did not come with screaming, slammed doors, or public spectacle. There was no viral video, no live stream, no dramatic social media post announcing that something had gone wrong. No one witnessed an argument. No one overheard raised voices. Nothing exploded in real time. And that was exactly why it hit so hard. Because when Teyana Taylor went quiet, people didn't understand at first that her silence was the loudest statement she could make. For weeks, she continued showing up in public polished and composed. She smiled on red carpets. She attended events. She looked radiant, confident, and unbothered. To the outside world, it seemed like business as usual. The glow was still there. The posture was still strong. The image remained intact. But behind that calm exterior, something had cracked. Something deeply personal. Something that didn't just bruise her ego or hurt her pride, but pierced her heart. At first, fans assumed it was just another phase. Another season of healing. Teyana has always been known as a woman who walks away with grace. She doesn't beg. She doesn't chase. She doesn't overshare. She has built her entire public identity on strength, self-respect, and choosing peace over chaos. She has never been the type to explain herself to the internet or perform her pain for validation. So when her social media presence shifted, people brushed it off. Her posts became less frequent. Her captions grew shorter. The joy in her eyes, while still present, looked just a little more controlled, a little more measured. But most people didn't question it. They assumed she was simply protecting her energy, doing what she's always done. What many didn't realize was that heartbreak has a way of revealing itself, even when you try to hide it. Those close to Teyana say the pain didn't come from one explosive moment. There was no single argument that ended everything. No dramatic betrayal revealed in one conversation. Instead, it came from realization. From slowly understanding that something she trusted, something she invested in emotionally, wasn't what she believed it was. And once that truth settled in, there was no undoing it. No conversation could reverse it. No explanation could soften the blow. Because sometimes the most painful heartbreak isn't about what someone did. It's about realizing who they are, and recognizing that the version of the future you were holding on to was never going to happen the way you imagined. What made it even harder was how public everything already was. Every move she made was being watched. Every smile analyzed. Every moment of silence questioned. People dissected her body language, her facial expressions, her outfits, her timing. And while she was trying to protect her peace, someone else was struggling with something very different. They were struggling with losing access to her energy, losing relevance in her world, losing control. That's where the real tension began. Because while everyone expected one person to be angry, to lash out, to react emotionally, the real rage came from somewhere else entirely. And when fans finally noticed it, they were stunned. Teyana didn't clap back. She didn't expose anyone. She didn't post cryptic messages or hint at betrayal. She didn't drop emotional quotes or vague captions designed to stir speculation. She simply stepped back. And sometimes walking away hurts the other person far more than staying and fighting ever could. Especially when that person isn't ready to accept that the chapter is truly over. People close to the situation say Teyana didn't leave to punish anyone. She didn't leave to make a statement. She left because she was exhausted, tired of emotional confusion, tired of carrying the weight of a relationship that no longer felt safe for her heart, tired of being the strong one for everyone else while quietly unraveling inside. And once she made that decision, she didn't look back. Not when the whispers started. Not when the blogs picked it up. Not even when the noise grew louder and more aggressive. That's when the real tension surfaced. Not from her, but from the one person who clearly didn't expect to be cut off so cleanly. Fans began noticing the cracks almost immediately. There was a subtle shift in tone. Posts that felt less reflective and more reactive. Captions that sounded defensive instead of healed. Energy that no longer felt grounded, but restless. Bitter. At first, people brushed it off as coincidence. A bad day. A misunderstood post. Just someone processing emotions in real time. But once the pattern became clear, it was impossible to ignore. There was frustration there. Not loud. Not explosive. But simmering. The kind that shows up in passive messages and carefully framed words meant to sting witut ever naming names. Some fans called it jealousy. Others called it wounded pride. A few went even further, saying it felt like entitlement. Like someone struggling to accept that they no longer had access to Teyana's emotions, reactions, or life. And that loss of access hurt more than any public statement ever could. Because rejection doesn't always come with an argument. Sometimes it comes with silence. And silence can be brutal. What made the situation even more intense was Teyana's complete refusal to engage. No clapbacks. No baggy quotes. No emotional posts explaining her side. Nothing. She kept showing up focused on her work, her child, her creativity. Moving like someone who had already done her healing privately. That contrast drove people wild. Because while one side looked unsettled, the other looked unbothered. While one side seemed stuck in the past, the other looked firmly rooted in the present. Fans started asking uncomfortable questions. Was the anger really about love? Or was it about control? About realizing the dynamic had shifted permanently? About accepting that the person you once had influence over no longer flinches at your reactions? Because when someone stops responding, it forces the other person to sit alone with their emotions. And not everyone knows how to do that gracefully. The hardest part wasn't the speculation or the commentary. It was the imbalance. One person processing loudly, the other processing silently. And in the court of public opinion, that silence spoke louder than any clapback ever could. Teyana wasn't reacting because she didn't need to. She had already done the emotional work behind closed doors. And once that door shut, she didn't reopen it for noise. That's what people slowly began to understand. Her focus was clear. Her priorities were intentional. Her child. Her creativity. Her peace. She wasn't trying to win a narrative. She was protecting her mental space like it was sacred. And that restraint made it sting even more for the person who no longer held emotional access. Because on the other side of that silence was someone grappling with a hard truth. Teyana no longer needed them to feel whole. And that realization can shake anyone. Sources say the heartbreak she carried wasn't about losing love in the traditional sense. It was about recognizing she had stayed attached out of loyalty, habit, and hope longer than she should have. And when that truth finally landed, it didn't come gently. It came with guilt for not letting go sooner, sadness for the years invested, and grief for the version of the future she once believed in. That kind of heartbreak doesn't scream. It settles. It rewires how you move, how you choose yourself, how you stop explaining your boundaries. And that's exactly what fans were witnessing in real time. Not drama but closure. Not bitterness, but growth. And sometimes the most powerful ending isn't announced at all. It's simply lived. There was grief for what she hoped it would be. Grief for the version of herself that kept trying. Grief for the future she quietly released. That's why her silence wasn't cold. It was heavy. Behind closed doors, emotions were raw. Conversations were tense. Words were spoken that couldn't be taken back. Not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. And honesty can hurt more than lies when it comes too late. The person who was really angry didn't just feel replaced. They felt exposed. Like the narrative they believed in was slipping away without their permission. And instead of processing that pain privately, it leaked out in subtle public ways. Energy shifts. Defensive behavior. Emotional reactions that didn't match Teyana's calm. Fans began choosing sides without even realizing it. Some praised Teyana for her maturity. Others questioned why she wouldn't speak up. But what many didn't understand was that speaking up would have reopened wounds she was actively trying to heal. Then came the moment that changed everything. A single action. Small but loud. Not dramatic. Not explosive. But unmistakable. It confirmed what people had been whispering all along. Teyana had emotionally moved on, and someone else hadn't. That's when the anger stopped being subtle. Because when someone realizes they no longer have access to you, they often confuse heartbreak with rage. They look for someone to blame. They rewrite the story to protect their ego. And suddenly, the person who walked away peacefully becomes the villain in their version of events. But Teyana didn't respond. Her silence forced people to look closer. And what they saw was a woman choosing herself. A woman refusing to perform pain for the internet. A woman who understood that healing doesn't require an audience. Meanwhile, the emotional cost kept piling up, being discussed daily, having her past replayed, watching strangers debate her feelings like they were fictional. That kind of pressure would break most people, yet she stayed quiet. And that quiet made the other person's anger stand out even more. Because anger is loud. It wants validation. It wants acknowledgement. And when it doesn't get it, it grows. Fans started asking the question no one wanted to answer. Was this really about love? Or was it about control? About pride? About losing the narrative? Once that question entered the conversation, there was no going back. Where things stand now is complicated. There is distance, emotional boundaries, a clear shift in energy. Nothing is fully resolved. But one thing is certain. Teyana Taylor is no longer negotiating her peace. And the person who's really mad is still learning how to sit with the loss.